Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to episode 5 of the City Chatter podcast. I'm John Bernstrom, Public Information Officer for the City of Grand Forks. Welcome to, again, episode 5. I'm joined this week by Ward 5 Councilmember Kyle Kvamme. Kyle, thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you guys doing this.
You were one that I reached out to early on when we were kicking this around. I'm like, hey, Kyle, I want to start with you. You're a podcast guy. And then it took us 5 weeks to make it work.
Yeah, unfortunately. I was really excited. I told everyone that get to be a part of this. And yeah, I'm a big podcaster, listen to a lot of that stuff. So interesting to be behind the microphone.
Yeah, it'll work out pretty well. So let's get right into it. We were talking beforehand. It was a pretty busy, big council meeting yesterday. It was the preliminary approval of the 2024 budget. You've seen the binder. I got asked how many pages are in the binder, and I go, we don't do pages, we measure in inches. It's about a 4-inch binder. Just your thoughts on the 2024 budget, what you saw in it, what things you liked, things you want to look a little bit harder, because you now have about a month before you get final approval.
Sure, yeah. No, I think that, at the end of the day, looking at how we have some natural growth so that we've got some additional growth in tax revenue from property taxes, but at the same point, having the ability to support the programs that we want to support, but yet cut the mills, even if it's a small amount, I think any amount is still appreciated. I think also too, I really appreciate when you look at, last year's budget and how much we were expected to bring in revenue wise and how over on that target we were. I really appreciate our finance department's conservative approach that's led us to success. It's led us to be, a net positive city. It's led us to really be able to cash flow the things that we want to do and do these great, I would say projects and initiatives and programs within the city.
You mentioned the finance department. Kudos to them. They got more awards yesterday for the previous year's budget. I'm fully assuming they'll get something along the lines down the road. But to your point, we were talking beforehand. Before yesterday's council meeting, there was an audit committee meeting where an auditor comes in and says, "All right, here's where you're looking at," and they were looking for stuff. They didn't really find anything for a budget the size of the city of Grand Forks. The nuance of a budget this size, to have an auditor come in and just say, looking good, I think is great.
Yeah, it's amazing to spend the time for them to go through the hundreds of pages of documents and to talk about hundreds of millions of dollars, whether in or out, to go through that and see, everything's great. It's a clean bill. And then even to look at, for me, it's really interesting to understand when you look at our debts and liabilities versus our assets and cash, they almost equal. And, talking with the auditors, that's a really rare thing for public entities. So I think it shows some responsibility that we have as far as our city. And then at the same point, it shows that we're spending money on things in an appropriate fashion.
And I think that's important. One thing that cities, government entities do is, I think Mr. Phelan says it well, let's make plans let's plan that people will be here 100 years from now.
Exactly.
Right. You're not always working just for tomorrow or for next year. You're working beyond. Even the budget yesterday, I'm going to go through some capital improvement stuff. They went out 6 years on it. There's some big projects coming up as far as road infrastructure type projects. I'll say that some city changing projects.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When you think about just the 47th Avenue interchange, that's huge. That's an opportunity to really make a change. And we've approved some preliminary design work that's still a little ways out. You look at the underpass at Demers. There's so much opportunity to change the way that our city works. And then also at the same point, the mayor's in this initiative to refocus on, what does economic growth look like? We have so many jobs and we've always focused on bringing in more jobs. I think we have plenty. I think that the time to focus on how do we make Grand Forks a better place to live, more attractive place to move. Maybe you want to set up a business here because you see of all the amenities that we offer our citizens. I think it's time that we do that. It's time that we make that shift, and I'm fully supportive of that.
When the mayor gave his State of the City, we define quality of life as that's different for everybody. For some people, that is the job alone, and that's it. For other people, you and I, we have families, right? So exactly. Conversation beforehand, schools and to and from schools and amenities regarding schools. Other people maybe retirement. Quality of life means something different for everybody, and that was an interesting, I'll use the term policy. You guys didn't really vote on it, but it was just like, we're going to go down this direction of using economic development dollar funds, not necessarily for infrastructure. You will still use it for infrastructure, don't get me wrong, but to focus on children's museum,
yep.
Aquatics and turf, whatever that looks like. It was a short conversation yesterday, but that was a big one.
Yeah, but even you look at the Alaris Center and the continued support we have there. the things that they've done in the last few years, it's amazing.
it's
The
crazy.
acts that we're going to see. Jonas Brothers, I don't know if I'm going to see you there, John. But,
No, but my
I'm
daughter
front
will be there.
row, and I'll be bedazzled, and it'll be great, right? It'll be an awesome time. So I think, when you talk about the, people in retirement age, we're doing all these things and still reducing the mill. It's not a huge amount, but it is a reduction. It's not an increase. There's lots of things going on. And at the same point, how do you be respectful? How do you balance? And how do you grow your community with people that will hopefully come here and stay?
Yep. Just a couple other capital improvement things that were in the budget. Now these could move, right? But this is what the plan. Next year, expect work on North Washington, the railroad underpass. Columbia Road overpass is going to get some work on it. Belmont Road, kind of down there by that pump station between 13th and 17th is scheduled to get some work. 17th Avenue South is part of a multi-year project. Washington to 20th next year. And then you go to 25, 62nd Avenue South. We're going to touch more on that in a little bit. Start that work on that 47th Avenue interchange extending west, 17th Avenue from 20th to South Columbia, right by Red River High School there. And then the work on that overpass, underpass, whatever it is, that railroad crossing on 42nd, set to start in 25. Again, that railroad underpass, the interchange, those are, I explain to people the flood changed the footprint of the city. These are a couple of projects that will change the footprint of the city. I mean, even that underpass changes where we think of future fire stations.
Sure. Yeah, no, and I think it's a generational opportunity. You look at all the work that's happening in other communities, specifically Fargo. I feel like they're putting up an overpass every couple of years, right? And you look at Grand Forks. It's been years, it's been decades since that's been done. And you look at all the growth, and it's been such a struggle because when you look at DOT guidelines, they don't want to build an overpass for things to come. They want to know that the demand is there. But fortunate or unfortunately, 32nd is so busy, and unfortunately, there's some safety issues there. So we're actually getting a lot of support from the DOT on that. And when you look at the underpass, we're getting support federally and from the state. So these are big ticket items that we're going to have lots of dollars from outside entities coming in to support that and change the way that our city works.
Yep. A couple other things on the budget yesterday. There was discussion regarding arts funding. So the city of Grand Forks provides funding to arts programs and event funding. CVB distributes the event funds through grants and stuff like that. And it was the community foundation. I use the term was the community foundation that did the arts. The arts funding was pretty steady for several years. Last year went up, and this year pulled it back a little bit. And there's some just talk about the conversation that happened in council yesterday regarding that and where it landed.
Sure. There was a lot of support. I got lots of emails and concerns about reducing, the arts budget. And I think if you look back at the last 5 years, it's been a pretty steady growth, culminating in 2 years ago at 120 something, 130,000 in program funds. And then we had a large bump from that 130, 128 up to the 175. And that was in response to some other factors. And ultimately, that was just a huge bump that we're kind of normalizing. And I'd say if you'd look at the track of where that was going, we should be at 150, 154 this year, I think is a fair number. And when you take out the kind of the potential administrative costs of managing those funds into the city, not only are we getting more transparency, but we're reducing the costs that don't get sent out. So I think in my math, it was a net of 10,500 that's kind of lost. But at the same point, I'd challenge our citizens if there's 2/3 of the project aren't getting funded, then that's a different issue, right? But if we're just barely missing the mark, then that's something to know. So being that we're managing it in-house, we're going to know. I think it's very easy to go to the department within the house and say, how many requests have you gotten? Are we totally missing the mark? Are we turning around?
Sure.
Are we turning away 9 out of 10 applications? Then maybe we adjust what we're thinking. But now we have the opportunity to do that, and we're still supporting, I think, at a higher level than would have been expected if you had zoomed back a couple of years.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's fair. And then also there was discussion, full disclosure, I'm a city employee, right? So I'm not going to give an opinion here, just discussion on the salary plan for city employees. I mentioned to you before we started recording here, if there were a perfect salary plan out there, every municipality would have the same one, and we don't. They're all different. The city's looking to change theirs, going from a merit system to a step system. That was preliminary approved yesterday. I'm assuming you probably had some conversations with employees as well.
Yeah, lots of conversations. And what's interesting is, I talked to some people that, I'd consider high performers, high function, staff at the city. And universally, everyone was supportive of having some sort of structure versus a little bit of the ambiguity created with the merit system that maybe didn't have I would say, everything figured out. I'd say there's a human factor there that can be right just as often as it's wrong. And giving people this stability and structure, I think, will lend to higher longevity, and I think would be appealing to people coming into the city, knowing that in 7-8 years, this is what I'm going to be making.
Sure. Everyone has a story. Every city employee has a story. Here's my story.
Yep.
I'm happy there was a change. I wasn't quite sure which was the right change for the salary plan, but I had a year where I had a good year. I had a good year. I scored pretty well on my PFP, the highest score I've ever gotten, and it was a year where, from a budget standpoint, nobody's fault. Nobody did anything wrong. Nobody did me wrong. Right? It was just the way it worked. There wasn't as much money into performance, and I got a smaller raise that year than I did a year where I didn't score as high in the PFP. And at that point, I was on board of saying, all right, I don't know what the right answer is, but let's take a look at it.
Yeah.
I was on employee reps at that time.
Yeah,
so.
no, and I would agree. I'd say for sure there was no one. I would say this is maybe one of the singular topics where I didn't hear a single voice saying, don't do this. I think everyone that I talked to at the city was universally saying, please, we want some structure. We want this. You know, I know how hard it is and how competitive it is out there to hire folks. We feel that professionally. So why not give those tools and give that planning to the city?
Yeah, and let's see how it works, right?
Exactly.
All right, well, that's the city budget. I should mention one more thing. Utility bills, this part of the city budget is not tax related. It's utility fee going up 4.5%. Average home, that's about $4 a month. So just so everyone is aware of that one. We talked about future things going on. This year, you're in Ward 5, which is the far southeastern corner of the city. I guess you've spread a little farther west. How far west do you go?
Yeah,
now?
all the way past Columbia even now. I think I go all the way across there, or maybe right to Columbia. Yeah, it used to be that the south was kind of split up between 5 and 6, and now it goes kind of all the way past. So yeah, I think we go all the way to kind of the farmland on the other side of Columbia.
And of course, one of those things that gets redrawn every census as we have official numbers. So that is your our biggest road construction job of the year is in your ward, South Washington. I believe we have that open to traffic now.
Yep. It's amazing, and I think people are really appreciative. I think it went really fast. I honestly didn't expect it to be done so quick, and it looks great. And I think we'll be fully functional until we get to the next stage next year.
You're right. Yeah, that's a two-stager.
Yep.
It was interesting. You had a ward meeting this past. Was it past spring? We were at the fire station. You had several residents. I was there. But you had several residents talking about intersection 55th and Washington. Bike paths. You know, it's a tough spot. I think that group should be excited about this project.
Yeah, for sure. I think looking at how we're trying to make that a little bit safer, a little bit more pedestrian friendly. I know, crossing Washington, we can always use another opportunity to slow things down as the city grows. It didn't make sense 20 years ago, but now it does.
Right. Another thing that's going on, this is not road construction wise, but it is private development. We have officially jumped 62nd Avenue South as far as city limits.
Yeah, amazing.
There's a potentially large, hopefully things goes well for the developer, south of 62nd, south of the golf course there. Talk about that development. It's a huge plot of land that they're working on.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And I think as a city, we got creative with ways to, I would say, defer specials in a developer-friendly fashion, but yet make it so that it's buyer-friendly, so that once they're getting a certificate of occupancy, those specials are on there,
right,
to prevent some of the issues that maybe happened a few years ago where people didn't know, there was delays. But by getting creative, working with the developers, we're able to get to the point where we're putting in over 100 lots. I think it's 114 lots.
Is that total, or is that just phase one?
I don't know. That's the number that's in the top of my mind.
It's big.
It's massive. But then, there's commercial development that'll happen there. There's, multifamily that'll happen there. And I think when you look at how we zone things, it's structured really well. We have this retention pond that, rather than making it a requirement, it's now going to become a feature. It's going to have a jogging trail. I think it's going to be a 1 mile loop. Their hope is that maybe that even becomes something that can get skated on in the winter. And
sure.
And then a big donation from the developers to build I would say kind of a landmark park that's more of a community park versus, there's other thoughts on large parks to attract people from the highway.
Mm-hmm.
This is more of a park for city residents and still, but something that'll be really, really dynamic and really interesting.
And that term development spurs development, right?
Exactly.
It really goes there as that gets going up. There's homes start coming up. Well, frankly, I've lived here long enough. You're Discovery Elementary, right? That was being built, and you're like, that's kind of out there. That's all built around now.
Yeah, and it's full too. That's the other thing. I mean,
Yeah.
their enrollment is full, and that's built up around there. And there's some lots available, but that's what spurred this development on. Is they only had 1 to 2 years of supply left.
Yeah, that is one thing our planning department does. Is they keep track of developable lots.
Yep.
And there's a formula. I don't know what the formula is. Of if you have this many, you're at healthy growth, and ours was shrinking.
Yeah.
And it is to bringing that in. Okay. Your work outside of city council, you're wearing the shirt. You work for Icon. Just talk about the work you do there, and then we'll get into a specific project.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, fortunate enough to have worked for Icon going on almost 9 years now. I'm one of the owners there. We do a lot of work all over the region, but I would say specifically, when you look at my role, I do a lot of K-12 education. So, our company does a lot of K-12 work, a lot of education work. We're fortunate enough to work with, the park district and the city and the county and the schools and the university. But I'd say kind of our passion is in education, and that's what we do a lot of, and which has led us to, the project with Valley.
And to that specific project I want to bring up is you've had a few council meetings. Is you've communicated with me, or just like, John, I'm gonna be on the council meeting, and then I'm gonna hang up because it's my turn at the school board meeting, and then I'm gonna connect again. So that's how it's gonna go, because the school district, their work with Valley Middle School, you're heavily involved in that. The referendum passed. Where is that project at right now?
Yeah, super proud of that project. That's something that, you look at our community, and I think we're maybe 38 years since the schools passed a referendum to pay for a project. So, proud of the effort that went into that, proud of all the professionals and the partnership with the administration there to make that happen. And then, where we're at now, we're just finalizing, I would say, the first phase of design. So design's kind of broken up into a few phases before you bid things out. We've got a construction manager, construction engineers, another Grand Forks-based company. So they're, our construction partner, and we're going through design. We've got our site kind of pretty well laid out, but we're going through and figuring out what, how big is each classroom? How does this connect? Let's talk about adjacencies. Let's talk about program. Let's talk about, how does a student flow through the building? Those are all those discussions that are happening now.
And part of that project, and I bring this up because it came up at planning and zoning on Wednesday, is currently the school district kitchen is at Valley Middle School. Yep. So all the meals for the school district, whether your kid goes to Kelly, goes to Century, whatever, are made at Valley Middle School. Valley Middle School is going to be getting torn down.
Yep.
So they're part of this project. Are you involved in the kitchen project as well? That's going to happen. They're going to relocate the kitchen to the district office on 47th. Is that all part of this?
Yep. So that's all part of the same project. I'd say, I'm loosely involved in that enough to where, there's discussions at P&Z earlier last week, and just talking through, how do we get truck traffic in that's coming in very often at 4:30 in the morning.
Yep, early morning.
Get it out of those neighborhood roads, right by University Park. That's really dense neighborhoods, right? So the discussion specifically was, how do we come off 47th and easy in, easy out? We can stay away from the residential, and luckily that option was made available to us, and that's something we're going to pursue.
Okay. So the kitchen's going to be headed down to, and there's some timing here. That kitchen needs to be in place before you tear one kitchen down.
Exactly.
Kids need to eat, right? So that kitchen project is not going to be happening at the same time. It's going to start sooner.
Correct. Yep.
On a project like this, you're building a school, you're replacing a school. It's not building a new school. How does that transition go from old school to new school? I'm assuming Valley doesn't get torn down first. There's going to be construction first. Can you kind of talk about some of that timeline a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the way this works is our goal and intent is to basically have the new Valley completely done, and done ideally over a break period where teachers can get moved in. Staff from the district can move furniture over. There'll be some things I'm sure that'll be reused, some things that are new. But what we want to give teachers a little bit of time to get in there, get set up, and then that'll allow them to open up the school and welcome students there. Then from that point, we'll start, taking down the old Valley. And then once that's cleared and a clean site, then we start working to put the sports fields back in.
And that's a good question. I'm not aware of it. Does Valley have a basement?
Partially. I'd say partially.
Partially.
Not completely. Yep. Yeah. So Valley is, the sum of 7 or 8 different construction projects.
It is.
So it's all kind of over the place. So yeah, I would say that, the new Valley will have mechanical things, but it won't have a formal basement.
Sure. And then so right now there's the football fields to the west of the existing Valley. fair to there's a like a t-ball field there. I don't want to call it a baseball field. It's Agriline, but it's not a full field. Is it fair to assume that's the location of the new school or proposed?
Yeah, it'll be actually potentially a little bit further east. So we want to make sure, one, we're setting up the new school to not impact University Park. But the other piece is that you want to also set up the school so that if we need to, 5-10 years down the road, add another bank of classrooms, we can do that still without interrupting University Park or impacting it. So we're set back in enough to allow for growth that wouldn't require the school to shut down, that we could just add on a pod of classrooms or a pod of classrooms, make things really simple. But at the same point, we want to embrace the park, but we don't want to, we don't want to interfere with the park.
Sure. Okay. No, that's good to. I've had people ask me, they're just like, "Where are these kids going to go?" And I'm like, "Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
My kid's school is full."
Yeah. No. That's the impetus for this whole project is if they were to have a catastrophic issue with their boiler, which still could happen in the next year.
Still could happen. Yeah.
There's all sorts of contingency plans. I can say that the district does have a plan. So if something happened, kids wouldn't not have a school. It would be an inconvenience and it wouldn't be great. And luckily, if we can make it another year, we should be fine.
Great. No, that's really a project. I as a parent with kids in school, even though my kids won't go to that school, just I see the benefits of my children, ability to walk to school, the neighborhood aspect. I get that.
Yep.
I get that. I also understand the other side of it, of that I'm a taxpayer and all that stuff. I'm coming at it as a parent, right?
Sure.
I'll be in a different spot down the road, but that's where I'm at. So I get that, and I appreciate you elaborating on that. Before you became a city council member, I knew your name from a service club in town called Young Professionals. Can you talk about that a little bit? And I'll call it newer, but it's been around for a while now.
Yeah.
Just the intention and the purpose of that group.
Yeah. So that's a great group. I think that as you look at the needs of our community, we have this resource of amazing young professionals that are graduated every year from UND. And how can we create an environment that fosters them to build relationships and stay here, and also create an environment where new young professionals coming into our area have a network and a group to connect, ability to find mentors, ability to do service as far as different volunteer groups and different volunteer activities, and at the same time have some fun and develop relationships. And for me, I was new to the community about 9 years ago, and it was one of the first things I did was started going to, they have a monthly lunch and learn, get to learn new topics, meet new people that you wouldn't necessarily meet, and develop some great, friendships and relationships that way.
No, that's good. My wife and I joke about this. I've lived in town here I am going on 27 years, right? Every once in a while, I still get it of, you're not from Grand Forks.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And I get it. Every community's like that. Every community, but is getting involved in stuff like that. I think that's great. And yeah, as an organization, it has been growing too.
Yeah. It's been growing, and we're fortunate enough that in Grand Forks, very rare we actually have a full-time employee, and that full-time employee is running the programs and fostering the relationships, engaging with different corporate entities to make sure they're funded. They're fully funded by donations and sponsorships, and I owe those relationships a lot, and was able to spend quite a few years involved in there. Was fortunate enough to serve as the president and go through that whole process and see how the bread's made and all the effort that goes into it, and the board meetings that aren't paid, and you go and you volunteer and you get things done, and you just hope that you're making impact for the next group, and they're doing amazing, and I'm really appreciative of what they do.
Yeah, no, that's great. I gave a list to you. I was just saying, hey, let's hit these topics, and we've hit them all. I do have a couple more. You've been on council now for.
I'm starting my 4th year, I would say.
You would be up for election again next year. Next year.
Yep.
Okay. These budget processes, they're involved. There's so many numbers. And the tough part is how the election cycle works for our city councils. When you're newly elected, that's the first thing you do.
Yep.
Hope you've done your homework. Good luck.
Yep.
That's probably the first piece of paperwork you get is here's the budget binder.
Yep.
As you've gone through this over how many years now, does it get easier or is it unique each single year?
No, I'd say, one thing is it's a credit to the finance team in the consistency and how they execute things. My first year, you're absolutely right. I think it was July 1 was my first day, and then almost immediately handed a budget binder. I was, fortunate enough to get some time with Maureen, our finance director, and I sat down with my sticky notes and my highlighter, and she spent probably an hour with me, and we went through all my questions. And what's nice is that those have all kind of carried forward. It's the same formatting. It's the same, I'd say the same, account numbers and the same expenses. And, using that knowledge, it's made it tremendously easier. But certainly that first year, oh man, I mean, hundreds of questions and emails, and they were just very gracious and took me through it. And I was very appreciative of that.
I do say this as I've worked for the city for 17 years. I know my portion of the budget.
Yeah.
And I believe it's 2 pages.
Sure. Yeah.
To have all that in place, like you said, as a council member, you could get grabbed on the street by whoever and just like, I want to talk about this.
Yeah. I mean, I've got the binder in my car. If someone stops me on the street, we can pull out the binder and talk through it. And I can't say that I've read every page line for line, but I can say that, there's not a section in there I don't understand what they're trying to cover and what the intent is. And I think that's the important thing, is to be able to find that information, dig, and know that you have, really great professionals to support us.
Yep. One other thing, we were talking about young professionals at yesterday's council meeting. You had the opportunity as council members to meet the summer interns. I had an intern we had for the summer. It's interesting is several years ago, interns were just, I'll pluck you off the street, see how it works. And it wasn't really an established program, right? We hired an intern to come up with an internship program. Alyssa did a great job. And here we are, how many years later? When you're dealing with those young professionals that are new to town or fresh to the work world, if you will, this internship with the city of Grand Forks, working with the EDC, I can't tell you the number of people we've hired out of that. Oh. It's been huge.
I can't say, how surprised I was when the first time I saw that program was something we did. I didn't know about it until I was a council member. And I'd say, if you look professionally at our, our company, our best employees are the ones that we get at an intern level.
Yeah.
And, they learn, how you work, and they understand and get, the process, from day one, and giving an opportunity for local students and young professionals to come here, get some great experience, and hopefully create some of those relationships, that stickiness, so when they graduate, they don't leave.
My favorite intern story is my friend Spencer. And I'll send this to him. He started as an intern. He was still in school. Everyone liked him, and he's just like, I'm really interested in city government and all this stuff. I want to get to city administration. And we're like, oh, okay, well, let's see if your internship's done. Let's see if we can find a spot for you. He was a glorified secretary for a while, but he was in the room, right? He was in the room, and he wanted to be there. We all knew he wanted to be there. Spencer's now the city administrator for the city of Devils Lake.
Also a past president for Grand Forks YP.
And another shout out to the YP. I believe that's where he met his wife.
Yep. They generate some great folks, if I'm not biased. But I would say, it's amazing to see his path and to watch him grow professionally, and then to see him just skyrocket. And he's succeeding over there, and it's great. I get to visit with him every once in a while, and he's got this great new family and this great, job and career, and the sky's the limit for him. Yeah.
Makes me feel like a father a little bit. I'm just like, I remember you as an intern, and frankly, I wasn't going to learn your name for a few weeks until I figured it was worth my while.
Sure.
No, it's good. Kyle, I appreciate it. Again, we've talked to you were one of the first person I talked to when it was just like, hey, we're going to work on a podcast. Right? How do we think this is going to work? What's a good format? And there's one thing with a podcast, there is no formats, right?
Sure.
Everyone does them different. One of my favorite TV shows is Only Murders in the Building. We're not trying to solve crime.
But we could. John, let's think about this. I mean, one of the interns was putting cold cases into the system.
That is true.
We run out of topics. You just bring me back in, and we'll just start going through things.
And if people are joking, yes, one of the interns that the police department had was doing cold case file stuff.
And another one, is working with explosves to keep, pests away from the airport. I mean, it's just amazing what those interns were able to do.
When you hire an intern, you're like, okay, you're gonna be keeping birds off of our wastewater ponds. What do I get to use? We have cannons.
Yep.
We have lasers.
I don't know if they're mounted on top of sharks, but that's still impressive.
And that intern did a really good job of coming up. I got to do with this, and this, and
it makes me want to submit for an internship with wastewater.
No, that's good stuff. Kyle, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I know that you've got to run to a meeting here, right?
Yep.
Part of being the boss of a company, right?
It's great. Great problem to have.
There you go. That's right. If there's no work, that's the problem.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Kyle, thank you very much. Ward 5 City Council member Kyle Kvamme, thank you for joining us for the City Chatter podcast. Our next podcast will be coming up in a couple of weeks. We get City Council President Dana Sandy here with us. We're working on the schedule on that one. I think we have that figured out. And of course, any other questions or anything, you can go to the city website, grandforksgov.com/podcast, and it gets you to the city chat. You can see the old, we've done four, this is our 5th one. We've done 4 others. You can watch the archived ones. You can also submit a question on there as well. I want to say thank you to Grand Forks Best Source for letting us use their studio. And with that, we'll say goodbye until next time.